Now we're going to take a look at our second example. It's going to feature two question types. It's going to feature the note and table questions, and we're going to do it all together as though we're in the exam. So let's get ready. Okay, and we're back with our second example for section 2. Now, this is going to be a bit different than the other examples we've done because we'll have the entire section played in the listening prompt. So we have the first half, which will have questions 11 to 16, and the second half, scrolling down here, to questions 17 to 20. So we're not going to have two different recordings. We're going to do everything in just one recording. We're going to underline and read information for questions 11 to 16 first. Then we're going to answer these questions. Then we will do the same thing. We'll read and underline for questions 17 through 20, and then fill out this table. So this is something that you would see on the exam, how section 2 has a note for one question type and a table for the other question type. And this would be section 2. And this is great because this way we can see what it's really like to answer two different question types with one listening prompt, and that's great practice. Now, I'm going to just scroll up here. Like we did in the previous example, I'm going to underline with you after the directions are read, and then I'm going to write my notes here and stick them on the visual aid, just so that it's clear it's what I would write in the actual exam. Okay, so without further ado, let us listen to the directions. Then we will underline and go through our keywords together.
Section 2. You will hear a radio broadcast called Focus on the Arts. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16 on page 4.
All right, and that is what you would hear in the actual exam. So let's do this quickly. I'll take it a little bit slower for you just so that everything is clear, but I would go ahead and read and underline at the same time only questions 11 to 16. Now I'd quickly make a note that we have no more than 3 words and or a number. I know we're talking about the arts, something that this is well known for, something it's famous for. Now the complex is made up of or consists of these things. So since we have this lengthy list, what I would do is make a small X, so something like this, every time the speaker mentions it. This way you know that the speaker is going in a certain order, and you will hear the one word that is not part of this list, and that is your clue to write it in number 12. So let me just go ahead and erase these marks so we don't get confused when the listening is played, but that's always a great little strategy for any time you see a lot of lists here. All right, then we're going to look at the historical background. I'll underline this. Years and dates are excellent keywords, so 1940, 1960s. I see here with bombs, so I see destroyed and a bomb. Center will be good to note. I see that it's capitalized, so it might be a specific name. Then I want to know when it was open to the public. The fact that we have 2 dates here will lead us to believe that number 14 should be some sort of date. Then we have managed. We'll want to see who this is managed by. And then open, I want to know how many days per year. The fact that this says days leads me to believe this will be a number. So really quickly before we hear the prompt, you should really pay attention to things that will allow you to write numbers. So I know that days will be looking at an amount of days, and in we'll be looking at some sort of date, because I know that in is a great preposition for dates. So even prepositions can make the difference here. Imagine you didn't know that in comes before a year or a season. This could potentially have been more difficult than it had to be. Okay, so we've done our preparation work for just this section. Let's listen. Remember, I'll be making my notes in these boxes, and I would encourage you to make your outline right along this visual aid. There's no need to create a new outline since this is already in a note outline form. Just go ahead and make your notes here like I will do. All right, let's listen.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello, and welcome to Focus on the Arts. I'm your host, Dave Green, and this is your very own local radio program. Every Friday evening, we put the spotlight on different arts and culture facilities and look at the shows and events that are on offer in the coming week. And today, the focus is on the National Arts Centre. Now, if you don't already know it yourself, I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's famous throughout the world as one of the major venues for classical music. But did you know that it's actually much more than just a place to hear concerts? The centre itself is a huge complex that caters for a great range of arts. Under a single roof, it houses concert rooms, theatres, cinemas, art galleries, and a wonderful public library, as well as service facilities including 3 restaurants and a bookshop. So, at any one time, the choice of entertainment there is simply enormous. So, how did they manage to build such a big arts complex right in the heart of the city? Well, the area was completely destroyed by bombs during the war in 1940. So the opportunity was taken to create a cultural centre that would be what they called the city's gift to the nation. Of course, it took a while for such a big project to get started, but it was planned in the 60s, built in the 70s, and eventually opened to the public in 1983. Ever since then, it has proved to be a great success. It's not privately owned, like many arts centres, but is still in public hands. It's run by the City Council. Both our National Symphony Orchestra and National Theatre Company were involved in the planning of the project, and they're now based there, giving regular performances every week. And as the centre is open 363 days of the year, there are plenty of performances to choose from.
So I'm just going to clear our screen of the red drawings, and we'll check all of this later just to get the full idea of the exam. I'd like you to do both question types together all at once. So let's scroll down to questions 17 through 20, and we'll listen back to the prompt.
Before you hear the rest of the broadcast, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20 on page 5.
Okay, same idea. Let's go ahead. This is not really any different in terms of strategy. We just have more things to look for. So we see the day, the time, the event, the venue, and the ticket price. Same thing with no more than 3 words and or a number. But here we've got these nice columns that will help us find the answers. Now, the days of the week will be helpful. We do not have to listen for any days of the week because they're already written for us. So when the speaker talks about Monday and Tuesday, we can immediately check this block here. When the speaker says Wednesday, we can check this block here. And when the speaker says Saturday and Sunday, we know that we are in this row here. Keep in mind, we'll have to find a venue for 1 answer, an event for 2 answers, and a ticket price for 1 answer. So the venue that we hear will be number 17, the ticket price will be number 19, and the 2 events will either be 18 and 20, and we must be specific here. So number 18's answer can only be number 18's answer. Same thing for 20. Now, we should use the words that are listed to our advantage. So make sure you know where these days of the week are located. Times are also important here. Okay, when we hear these numbers, we can immediately go to this row. And we have a ticket price. £8 is the only ticket price here with number. This one is free. Then we have a Canadian film, art exhibition, The Magic Flute by Mozart, Cinema 2, Gallery 1, and free. Now remember to use this visual aid to your advantage again and make your notes right along here or directly on your table. You might see that the speaker gives a couple of descriptions for many things, or the speaker may jump around with what he is saying. If you write something that you later find out was a trick or it's not the correct answer, just mark it out in your notes. It's better to write more than to not write enough. All right, let's go ahead and prepare for our listening 17 to 20.
Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So, to give you some idea of what's on, and to help you choose from the many possibilities, we've made a selection of the star attractions. If you're interested in classical music, then we recommend you go along to the National on either Monday or Tuesday evening at 7:30 for a spectacular production of the Magic Flute, probably the most popular of all Mozart's operas. It's in the Garden Hall, and tickets start at only £8, but you'll have to be early if you want to get them that cheap. And remember, it's only on for those 2 evenings. For those more interested in the cinema, you might like to see the new Canadian film, which is showing on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. in Cinema 2. And that's called 3 Lives. It's had fantastic reviews, and tickets cost just £4.50, which is a reduction on the usual price of £5.50. So it's really good value, especially for such a great movie. But you can see the centre's main attraction at the weekend, because on Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m, they're showing a wonderful new exhibition that hasn't been seen anywhere else in Europe yet. It's a collection of Chinese art called Faces of China. That's in Gallery 1. And it has some really fascinating paintings and sculptures by leading artists from all over China. And the good news is that it's completely free, so don't miss it. So why not go along to the National Arts Centre next week for one or all of these great events? And you can always pick up a programme and check out all the other performances and exhibitions on offer, or coming soon, on almost every day of the year. Next week, we'll be looking at the new Museum of Science.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
All right, that's the end of section 2. So in theory, we would have 30 seconds to check our answers, check our notes, make some guesses if we really weren't sure. But you'll see that we sort of did everything at the same time as we were listening. Now I've cleaned it up a little bit. I've gotten rid of the boxes here, but we're going to go over this all together. So I'll scroll back up, and soon you will see the transcript of the entire section on the right-hand side. Okay, and here we are with our transcript. So we'll start from the beginning, and you saw that it came very much in order, just like it would for this question type. Now, he starts off by saying it's famous, so the National Arts Center is famous throughout the world. And I did mention this when we were going through our keywords. Keep your synonyms close, because the listening exam will use various synonyms, different ways to say things to test your knowledge of vocabulary. And so it said it's famous throughout the world as one of the major venues for classical music. And so we have classical music, 2 words. It fits within our structure, and it is the answer to number 11. Now, as going down here for what the complex consists of, you saw that I made general marks and lines to go through the list. The list definitely came in order, and the last thing that was mentioned by the speaker was a bookshop. So he talked about the concert rooms, theaters, cinemas, art galleries, public library, 3 restaurants, and a bookshop. So there we go. Bookshop is the correct answer. Now, you could also say bookstore. That would have been accepted just because it would be the American way or North American way to say bookshop, but I would play it safe and write exactly what you hear. Now, for the historical background, these dates really did help us, because he talked about how the area was destroyed by bombs during the war in 1940, and then he also mentioned the 60s. So you see that 60s was here as a clue. And he said that it was planned in the 60s. So we have this word here. It was planned in the 60s, built in the 70s. Now this is something that was meant to throw us off guard, since 70s was not included. But I hope we didn't fall for that. And it said it was opened to the public in 1983. So we have the exact keywords in the transcript: open to public, and then the year 1983. Managed, we see here that it's not privately owned, but it is still in public hands. It's run. So run here is a synonym for managed. It's run by the city council. And lastly, it said that it is open. The keyword open was used 363 days of the year. So here we see 363. We knew it was a number. We also knew that this date here was going to be a number because of the preposition in. So excellent job if you were able to follow along. Now note that the keywords are very important. In general, for any question type on the listening exam, you'll have to pay attention to your synonyms. So even though this is considered one of the easier question types, don't forget about your synonyms. You see here, it's really helpful. Let's focus on the second half of the section now. Okay, we're looking at the second half. Let's start with number 17. Notice how the speaker spoke for a little bit beforehand, but the keywords Monday or Tuesday, 7:30, and the magic flute, these were all given in the transcript. So these are 3 clues that should have told us to look at the venue first. Also, as we know, these are more than likely going to come in order. So 17 was our first answer and the first thing we heard in the transcript. He said it's in the garden hall. So it's pretty quick, and that's why there are so many clues beforehand, because the answer is given and it's pretty quick, so we don't want to miss it. So you could write the garden hall. You could also just write garden hall, but both are correct because the garden hall still fits within our 3 words and or a number. But remember, these articles indefinite and definite are not obligatory. Let's continue on to number 18. We saw the keyword of Canadian film, so that came first. Also cinema, sorry, that came first. We have cinema, Canadian film, Wednesday, 8 p.m., cinema 2, and finally it tells us 3 lives. So notice how there's a lot of buildup, because if you miss it, you really don't have another option. So pay attention to your key words. Then immediately after, it says it had fantastic reviews. Tickets cost just $4.50. Keep in mind, you'll have to put the pound sign just like you see here, or the dollar sign if that is the correct currency. And keep in mind that the transcript tries to confuse you, which is a common trick in the IELTS exam. It said here immediately after 5:50, and they do that on purpose because they know that people will have gotten lost and they'll just be blindly listening. So they'll throw out a couple of prices or a couple of numbers just to confuse you. So always make sure you're listening actively and you're listening attentively. Okay, the last one, we have number 20. It was at the very end. Now, it says again, Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Many, many keywords and many clues for us. We see that it is a collection of Chinese art called Faces of China. So I went ahead and wrote that down. There are a couple keywords after as well, so this is a bit more difficult. And it said it's in Gallery 1, which is right here. And then at the very end, it said it was completely free. So notice how this last one was the most difficult because it had some keywords at the end after the answer had already been said. Okay, so there we have it. I really hope you were able to follow along with me. Notice how everything came in order and the outline was provided for us. So in section 1, we would usually keep a chart with 2 different speakers, but our section 1 example earlier did not require us to keep track of details of speakers. So we went ahead and just used the visual aid that was given to us. It made it a lot easier and a lot quicker. And for section 2, we definitely expected a monologue, but this outline format in the first example was perfect because we were able to keep notes as though this was our own outline. We kept notes and we answered the questions at the same time. So we were multitasking. And the table was excellent because it gave us keywords before and sometimes after. The biggest thing here is to really keep up with the speaker and brush up on your synonyms. All right, great job. Let's wrap up this lesson with some do's and don'ts. Okay, it's time to wrap up this lesson now with a couple of do's and don'ts. First off, remember to obviously utilize your time. Now, you saw that we didn't have that much to underline in terms of keywords and information, but still make sure that you are using those full 20 seconds to gather everything you need to have the best level of comprehension for your listening transcript. Also, in this time, you could study up on synonyms if you have some time. The synonyms will probably be basic. So, for example, today we looked at well-known and famous in our last example, but just be aware that the speaker can use different words to say a couple of words that are already on the outline or the form or the table. This can be done before test day, so make sure you prepare. Then, as you're listening, follow and use the visual aid to your advantage. This is very important. You can make your notes right along it. You can make some marks for things that have been said. Really use that visual aid. And of course, since you're writing out things, make sure to write clearly. As always, we suggest capital letters and making sure that everything is legible. Now for some don'ts, make sure you don't waste time. This is directly linked to our steps up here above, utilizing your time, the full 20 seconds. Probably the worst thing you can do is focusing on only one aspect. Because if you focus on one aspect, you may forget to be taking notes, you might forget to be crossing things off, and you might get lost, especially in a monologue like we saw in section 2. Once you get lost, it's very hard to recover from that. So practice your multitasking skills beforehand, and don't keep an entirely separate outline. If you've watched our other videos, we actually do suggest keeping charts and outlines on your test booklet right next to the words that you're reading. But in this case, in this specific question type, it's actually best if you use the visual aid that is given to you. You don't want to put any extra work for yourself if the visual aid is already an outline. Also, don't write the incorrect amount of words. Make sure that you are paying attention to your instructions with one word only, or 2 words, or 3 words and a number. Our first example had a really good way of looking at this because we had a lot of numbers and words together. And of course, don't leave anything blank. This is the worst thing you could do. Even if you do get lost within the monologue or the conversation, try to write something and hope for the best. Take your best guess. It's better than nothing. All right, I really hope that you enjoyed this lesson today. Like I said, it is one of the most common and sought after question types because it's considered quite easy, but you'll still need to practice it. You don't want to fall for these tricks. You don't want to fall for long monologues and getting lost. So practice this again, follow up on your time, and make sure that you're really taking it seriously. Of course, you can visit us at www.bestmytest.com/IELTS for more practice tests, for more examples, and for more lessons. We're waiting for you over there, so go ahead and visit us and continue practicing to get the best score possible. Thanks so much again. Have an excellent day. I'll see you for the next lesson.